It is Sunday, the 2nd of November, 2025. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Trump Israel Hamas ceasefire deal and the fact that the ceasefire has once again been violated by Hamas, literally under the eyes of U.S. surveillance drones. MQ-9 was the type of drone that was used in this latest discovery. So since about a week, maybe a few days less, maybe a few days more, but about a week, U.S. forces have been flying drones over Gaza. The U.S. forces are stationed in CENTCOM headquarters, and they have a command operations center in Kiryat Gat in Israel, along with people from other groups in the international forces that are there as part of the ceasefire deal. And those forces have discovered, by using the U.S. drones, that they've seen with their own eyes, and not just Israeli drones reporting them or IDF reports telling them, but actual U.S. MQ-9 drone footage has now recorded Hamas terrorists stealing food from an aid truck going into Gaza. So for all you people who are denying that and denying, oh, Israelis can't be trusted, this and that, I have the United States military. This is especially important for you on the woke right, who think you're all pro-military, whatever, but actually you're just anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, and you just can't bring yourself to admit it. But you really should. It would be a lot better for you. In particular, the drone captured an aid truck being attacked as it drove through Gaza with a presumably Palestinian driver in it. The driver was taken out of the truck, like dragged out by force, dragged to the side of the road, or actually the middle of the highway, apparently, where he was. And then the truck was looted, and the goods were taken from the truck. And then the forces of Hamas drove off with the truck that they had just looted, secured from the driver. So they prevented yet another food aid truck to be delivered to the Palestinian people like it's supposed to be, which they're supposed to do with every truck that is brought to them for secure delivery to its destination, right? But no, instead of delivering it to the destination, they actually just steal it and bring it to one of their own secure facilities where they don't distribute it to the people. It's a secure facility for themselves, not for the people, which goes against the very agreement that they have signed, because the agreement stipulates specifically that they're not supposed to do that. Right? They're supposed to lay down their weapons, hand over their arms. And that obviously would preclude them stealing the very aid that they are assigned to deliver. Right? So the fact that they're doing that is just more evidence, once again, that they are violating the agreement. And that obviously does not bode well for the life expectancy of said agreement. But that's where we're at now, in terms of like getting the agreements to move forward, right? We are still stuck in phase one, where Israel is still waiting for the delivery of a number of hostages' bodies to be returned. Well, I should still say just hostages, because I know even though Israel expects all of them to be dead, well, they haven't all yet been returned. So maybe there is some miracle of miracles that one or more of them are alive. I know it's hopeless at this point, but there's always hope, even when things seem hopeless. So who knows? Maybe there'll be some miracles. Anyway, so that is basically the status of that. And what that means, for obvious reasons, is that there is a situation which precludes the ceasefire from moving forward, right? As I said, because you have the Hamas continuing to violate every step of the way, continuing to drag out and delay every forward step possible, right? Why? Because they don't want to actually do the things that they said that they would do, right? And this is not the first time, obviously. They have violated every agreement that they made with Israel during this past 2 years. And they will obviously continue to violate the rest of the agreements that they agree to do, because that is what they do, that is who they are. They don't violate, they don't honor their agreements, and they specifically don't honor agreements that they make with Israel and also the United States. But that's for another story time, if you will. But yeah, the Hamas is basically laughing in the face of President Trump. Every time he says, oh, another 48 hours, they view that as weakness. They view that as a concession by the United States and all of the powers that signed that document. So it makes the document more and more of a joke to them, because to them, the way they see it, anyone who signed that document is a sucker. Right? They don't view that. Hello there. Hope the elves are okay. Yes, the elves are fantastic. Hello, hello. And Rudolph, of course. Do I look like Santa to you? It's very funny. Thank you. Yes, Santa in Israel. Why not? In November. Absolutely. You know what? It's actually funny. A couple years ago, I was walking around here in November, actually, and there actually was a Santa walking around not far from where I am actually right now, which is kind of crazy because it's not a place you would normally think of seeing Santa in that time of year. But I did, and it was kind of cool in a funny kind of way. So we have a situation, like I said, in which Israel is basically stuck in a kind of a stalemate for the time being with these people in the Hamas who refuse to do their thing. We know that at least one of them, who's considered a significant player in their organization, is a person who, in theory, can be negotiated with. On the military side, I mean, on the military, the terrorists in Gaza, what they call the military side. And the issue with that is that, of course, well, he's not in charge. But he is relatively high up, and he is apparently somebody that can be negotiated with. He's Adin al-Hassan, if you know who he is, something like that. And he is somebody that held hostages, met with hostages he was holding, told them reportedly that they were literally more valuable to him than gold, because obviously he could negotiate with them. As long as they were alive, he could get more for them, in terms of like being able to demand more Palestinian terrorists to be released from prison, etc. So he is somebody who's keenly aware of the value of what he has when he has it. And he is someone who has also said to the very same hostages that he is always willing to negotiate, that the door is always open for negotiations. And why is that important? Well, it's important because when you're dealing with a person like that, yeah, when you're dealing with a person who basically says to you, we are willing to negotiate, right? The door is always open and we're willing to negotiate. What he's really telling you is the door is never closed. Right? We're not just willing to negotiate, but the door is actually never closed. So even when we say, oh, we refuse to negotiate, we're still willing to negotiate, right? That's the real key lesson there, right? And again, that's important because when you are dealing with terrorists, and often you don't know who you can and can't deal with, when you can identify a person that you can negotiate with, this is actually very helpful for discovering ways forward in what otherwise seem like practically impossible ways forward, right? So it is actually very helpful to have somebody like that who is a significant player on the other side. But again, he's Hamas and he is a terrorist. He's not a soft cookie, you know? And so we need to make sure that we do everything we can to secure every step of the plan to be done as ordered. And so far, it has not been. And that is a reflection of Israel not pushing hard enough because we're still prioritizing returning, getting the dead bodies home. And the problem with that is now, every day that passes, international forces are gathering in CENTCOM, doing work there. CENTCOM base in Kiryat Gat, I mean. They're doing work there, which is contradictory to the actual timing of the steps. Right? They're supposed to be collecting the weapons of Hamas. They're not supposed to be fuddy-duddying around in Kiryat Gat, moving along different steps before they actually move along that step first, right? That step is first. Disarm the Hamas. That is the very next step that's supposed to happen. The fact that they have not done it is everything you need to know about why this deal is facing a lot of problems right now, right? They're moving the cart before the horse. And right now, the horse is what needs to move. And that horse is Hamas giving up their guns, surrendering power, stepping away from politics. It's not, let's let these guys negotiate their own future. No, that's not the deal. That's not what an unconditional surrender is, right? They're supposed to surrender unconditionally to international forces, which they have not done. There should be no international forces entering Gaza until the Hamas literally gives up their guns, which should happen immediately. But international forces should not enter Gaza in order to police the area first before Hamas gives up guns. That is not okay. That is not acceptable. The only entry of international forces should be to enter Gaza with a bunch of big ass trucks. That's a technical term. Very large trucks. And collect those guns and all the other weapons they have, put them in those trucks, make a point of driving them out of Gaza into Israel for the IDF to dispose of, and accept the surrender of Hamas. Right? That is what should happen. That is all that should happen right now. There is no need for the international forces to police anything right now. Not in Gaza. Hello. Rudolph, what's up, man? And myself. Hey, guys, if you're new here, thank you very much for dropping by. By all means, please like and comment and share. And of course, subscribe so that way I can, hopefully reach some more people. I do appreciate it very much. I don't have any sponsors. I'm not monetized. None of that. I'm just bringing you information based on my many years of experience and knowledge in this field. So if you want to stay up to date about geopolitics from somebody who's literally lived it for a very long time, by all means, subscribe. So anyway, like I said, what right now needs to happen is that the forces in Gaza need to surrender. There is no strategic advantage right now for international forces to be taking up any positions, not a single one, inside of Gaza, without first receiving weapons from Hamas as part of their surrender. Right? They have to give the weapons to Hamas, from Hamas to the international forces. That's what they have to do. And then they have to surrender. That can be all done in one meeting. Here, take our weapons and we surrender. The moment you take these weapons from us, we have surrendered, by definition, because we no longer have the guns to hold on to the power. And now the I-4, the international force, can take over Gaza at that point. Until then, sending in international forces, especially from countries like Turkey and Qatar, is literally stoking the fire. It's stoking the flames, 100%. Why, do you ask? Well, because Qatar and Turkey both have vested interests in seeing Hamas remain in power. Because you didn't know, those are two of Hamas's biggest assistants, right? They are two of their largest sponsors. Both of them house Hamas political people in their countries, right? They give them free housing or whatever, fancy housing, not even just free, right? They let them live like billionaires, literally, because they are, and they treat them like kings. They don't treat them badly. They don't make them live under any kind of hardship. They don't push them in any political way, despite the fact that NATO is a member of, Turkey is a member of NATO and is a U.S. ally. It has not helped the United States to rein in Hamas, right, in this situation. You can say, well, they put pressure on Hamas after Israel struck Qatar. Maybe. We don't know that for sure. And you can say, well, Qatar definitely helped put pressure on Hamas after Israel hit Hamas in Qatar. Again, maybe, but we don't know for sure. But what we do know for sure is 3 weeks after Israel hit Hamas in Qatar, an attack which everybody condemned and many people mocked because they said, oh, Israel failed to get the 5 terrorists that were sitting in, a very easy target. Hello, there was a ceasefire 3 weeks later. I would say that was a very effective hit, right? More effective than killing anybody. It actually got the Hamas to sign the paper to say, okay, we're not going to fight anymore. All right, so at least temporarily, they said they're not going to fight anymore. Now, of course, we don't believe that they're not going to fight forever because they're liars, because they're Hamas. Nevertheless, right, Qatar and Turkey being part of the deal was good in the sense of it showed the world, hey, look, like literally nobody supports these guys anymore. Even Hamas signed the deal, which means even they agreed to do it. Of course, they haven't done it yet. All these things they said they'd do, and they violated the agreement time and time and time again, including in this, like I said, latest round with the theft of the aid truck that was caught on video by an MQ-9 drone operated by the United States. And all that said, Turkey and Qatar are still trying to sidestep getting the actions done that need to be done, right? They're helping Hamas by trying to run passive interference, by doing exactly what I told you guys were going to do from the beginning when I said, watch for these other countries that are on the quote-unquote sidelines to have their patience tested by Hamas actions and then Israeli counteractions. And which one will break them first? We even saw last week Qatar blaming Hamas, not Israel, Hamas, for violating the ceasefire when they killed a soldier, which led to a reprisal that killed over 100 people in Gaza, most of whom the IDF says were terrorists, many of whom the local Hamas says were civilians. Of course, they're going to say that. They always say everybody was civilians. Sure. Well, it is probably true that some civilians probably died. We don't know. But it's probably true that some civilians, and that is actually tragedy. Like, that's really tragic. There shouldn't be any innocent people dead. But of course, when you're Hamas and you hide behind or among the civilians and you refuse to let your civilians out of the way, that's what's going to happen, right? So no surprise there, unfortunately. And that's why we have the situation that we have. So in short, once again, to wrap things up for you nice and neat, if you have any questions, by the way, ask her. What's up? I knew myself. I read that. Personally, don't believe Hamas will ever disarm. Why would terrorists give up their weapons? Exactly. Palestine will be free. Yeah, dude. Palestine could be free if they weren't led by terrorists. The problem is that they are led by terrorists. The problem isn't Israel. Israel is perfectly happy to have a peaceful state live next to it. The problem is the people in the Palestinian population who lead them are not willing to live next to Israel peacefully, right? They want all of Israel. They don't want to live on the land that Israel has agreed to give in exchange for a state of peace, right? No, They want all of the land, including the land which has been Israel since it was reestablished in 1948. And of course, you can say, well, historically, it was also Israel thousands of years ago. That's fine, but let's just look at the world as it was since Israel was reestablished as a state. Okay, so since 1948. Okay, since 1948, the state of Israel has been on very much, even though it is different now than it was in 1948, it's still quite similar. Okay, yeah, it's different, but it's quite similar. The difference is that Israel controls, one way or the other, the security overall of Judea and Samaria, and now again Gaza, because this little thing called war happened in the last couple of years, which forced Israel to take over the Gaza Strip again, and then remove itself from about, down to a position of controlling only about half of it now since the ceasefire. And the situation for the Palestinians is such that they can still have a peace with Israel. Right? Like Israel is actually still advocating for peace, despite what you may think. The actual Israeli government wants peace. But does that mean that we want a two-state solution anymore? Or a one-state solution, or something else? Maybe a three-state solution, maybe a five-state solution. By the way, I've actually spoken with that at length, people who understand this topic very well, and they also understand that a multi-state solution that is not just two states could actually be something like a five-state solution, and it could actually work. But that's, again, another topic for another video that I will be happy to present to you and give you all the details. In fact, I think I did a little video of it a few months back. If you look for it in my archives, you might see that video that I did where I presented to you the idea of the five-state solution, which is actually very practical and a great way to reduce the tensions and the conflicts between the people and the areas. But neither here nor there for now. Okay. The point is, we don't know if Israel is any longer interested in a one-state solution or a two-state solution, or any other kind of solution, because many of the people in Israel that used to be for a two-state solution no longer are. Okay, now the government officially still is, but governments change all the time in a democracy. And we have an election coming up. If the people vote again for the same government, well then officially the party line will still be, probably, unless they change it, that there will be eventually a two-state solution, but not anytime soon, because we need first for the Palestinians to stop being violent. And that's exactly what I'm saying. We're perfectly happy to have a state of Palestine if the state of Palestine would be peaceful. Shy of that peacefulness, it's a little bit challenging to advocate for such a situation, right? Like we can't say, hey, we should have that kind of we can't sit there and say we have a solution that's going to be long lasting as long as the people that are at the top of the Palestinians refuse to accept Israel's right to exist, period. Right? And now you can tell me, well, Israel wants a one-state solution. That's also refusing the Palestinians' right to exist. No. The Israeli version of a one-state solution, which, by the way, is not official government policy, but those who advocate for a one-state solution, where the entire country is Israel and the Palestinians live in Israel in peace, observing the law and have equal rights, just like every Israeli, right? They can vote, they can do whatever, and they can be part of the Israeli state, just like Arab Israelis, right? This would include all the Palestinians from Judea and Samaria and Gaza. The people who advocate for that, while I think that's a problem demographically, if those people are willing to live here peacefully, that's the point of view of the advocates of that. They say we're willing to do that if they're willing to live here peacefully. Did you catch the phrase, though? They're willing to live here peacefully. Now, notice, by comparison, any Jews going to Judea or Samaria who will literally be met with violent force, right? If you go to Judea and Samaria and you are a Jew, Right now, you will be probably not walking out of there, right? You will be probably very dead when you are leaving that place, if you leave that place, right? Because in areas A and B, not anywhere in Judea and Samaria, obviously, but in areas A and the parts of areas B that they control also. Just like if you go to Gaza, right? If you go to Gaza right now and you're a Jew, yeah, big mistake. Don't do that, right? Do not do that because they literally have like laws on the books. for for the few laws they actually have, they include that, right? What is that? They include the right to basically hunt and kill Jews, right? They're kind of crazy people, but I tell you, don't be surprised by it. Um, so it should really not be a surprise to anybody to hear that people in this country are not so keen on having um, a neighbor that wants to annihilate us, right? For them, a one-state solution isn't this is Palestine and we all get to live here in peace. I know they tell you that in the propaganda videos. I know they tell you that in TikTok University. But talk to any actual Palestinians who don't want a state of Israel here, and there are a lot of them, and they will tell you, yeah, no, for us, Israel is a state that is occupying Palestine in its entirety, and the entire state of Israel must go, and there cannot be any Jews living in Palestine, and if they refuse to leave, we will kill them. And not like if they refuse to leave, we'll give them some time to pack up and go. No, like when we invade, if they're still there when we invade, we will kill them. Right? Like that's their view. They're not like going to come up to the Jewish houses and knock on the door and say, hey, we're taking over. You need to leave, pack up your stuff and go. No, no, no. They're going to rampage through the country like they did on October 7th and do that again and again and again and again. Hopefully until the point where there are no Jews left living in Israel. That's their goal. Right? That's literally what they are hoping for. And that, well, if you're Jewish and or Israeli, that's a problem. Because guess what? They also feel that way about Arabs who live here. They don't just hate Jews who live here. They also hate their Arab brothers and sisters who stayed behind in 1948 and took up Israel's offer of living here peacefully. And equal rights, and they got citizenship, and they got all the benefits, plus they don't have to serve in the army. Plus, when you build a house in their neighborhoods, you're paying like nothing for the property and the development because it's Arab towns, so they're much cheaper. So they got a really good deal, to be honest, the Arabs living in Israel. In fact, they say very often that they are living better than any other Arabs anywhere in the Middle East in terms of like their freedoms, their freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of being able to criticize whatever they want, not just the government, but anything. Their freedom to associate, their freedom to do whatever the heck they want. Right? They are free people. They are absolutely just like Israelis because they are, in fact, Israelis, right? And that is one of the biggest advantages that Arab Israelis have over their Palestinian brothers and sisters, right? The Palestinian brothers and sisters did not choose wisely, as the old saying goes from the old Raiders of the Lost Ark movies, if you remember. If you know, you know. And that's why, right, when push comes to shove, when you ask Arab Israelis, would you like to live in Palestine or would you like to stay in Israel? They will tell you, practically down to every man, woman, and child. Yes, there are some that won't agree with this, but the vast majority of them do. They say very proudly, yeah, no, we want to stay in Israel and be Israeli. Thank you. We don't want to go live in Palestine under Palestinian leadership, which is led by terrorists who are, on top of being extremely violent and deadly, corrupt. Not just corrupt like, typical westernized political corruption. Like, they are incredibly corrupt. They are far more corrupt than even the worst Israeli politicians and American politicians and European politicians. They are, like, unbelievably corrupt, right? And so, for them to acknowledge that Israel is actually a better place for them to live than under the Palestinians is a bold statement because it confirms that Israel, from the point of view of people who are not considered natural allies, even though they are, because they're literally Israelis, But people who perceive them to be, oh, they're Palestinian Arabs or Palestinian Israelis. No, they're Israelis. But people call them Palestinians just for the purposes of discussion or whatever. It confirms that even the people that are perceived to be not natural allies of Israel are actually incredibly patriotic Israelis, because they realize how good they have it here compared to most places that they might live. Now, again, I'm telling you this as somebody who's spent decades dealing with this, decades and decades, more than a few, and in fact, more than, yeah, well, and my vested interest in this is clear. Yeah, I live in Israel, and I want this country, whether I live here or not, to be safe for all of its inhabitants, whether they're Israeli or hold some other identity. I don't care. You're a guest in my country. I want you to be safe. I want all these wars to end. I want people to live safe and happy and prosperous and healthy lives, right? I don't want people to suffer in my homeland. I don't want them to come to a place where they're, visiting temporarily or living long term themselves and suffer. That's nobody's dream, right? We don't wish that upon anybody that visits us, which is one of the reasons that during this war, when the foreigners who were killed and those who were captured and later killed or released, when that happened to the foreigners, Israel had an additional sense of duty to retrieve them from hell, whether they were dead or alive, because their families have just as much of a right for closure, to mourn their beloved family members who were attacked and hurt and killed on that day for the crime, quote unquote, of being in Israel. Which, if you can imagine, that is considered a crime by the people who committed those atrocities, right? It should make you realize how insane that is. Go home, invader. Greetings from Argentina. Yes, thank you. You are invaders. You're the nicest person I know. Okay, thank you. Hey, Aston Villa, I love you guys. Hope you guys play against Maccabi Tel Aviv. How'd that game go? Did that game go? So yeah, Palestine will be free one day if the Palestinians will be led by peaceful people. And I really hope that happens, because I have no problem with the Palestinians ruling over themselves if they're living in peace next to us. I do have a problem if our neighbors fight against us. By the way, can you name me a single country which would be okay with their neighboring country constantly attacking them for many, many decades? Can you name me a country? No? Me either, because it's not a thing people do, right? So yeah, and you say your invaders go home. Who's invaders? The Arabs. How do you think the Arabs got to Palestine? They conquested this land after Muhammad died and his followers came up here, right? That's how they got here. They didn't get here through some magical spontaneous combustion and just appeared here. No, they're not from here. They are colonizers. Right? How did the Palestinians, the Arabs who now call themselves Palestinians, how did they become Muslims? They became Muslim through forced conversion, for the most part. Right? Those who came here, of course, from Arabia themselves, were already Muslims, and those who did not come here were forcibly converted. Right? Women were raped, children were born, made to be, grown up to be Muslims, despite the natural ethnicity of their parents, of their mothers at least, and generations of Arabs were born. And they did that for many generations until the overwhelming majority of the population was Arab or Arabized in that way. And so they're not really Arabs for the most part. In fact, many of the Palestinians, which is another reason I don't hate Palestinians, I love them. They're literally my brothers and sisters, right? I'm from Judea, like I'm a Jew, therefore my DNA traces back to Judea. And I should say, and in my case, my roots trace back to Judea. And in the case of the Palestinians, guess what? 1,500 years ago, guess what they were? Largely, guess what they were? They were Jews too. Which means I don't hate them at all. I view them as literally my brothers and sisters who were forced many generations before the ones born now, yeah, alive now, but their ancestors were literally Jewish, and they were forced out of Judaism by the conquering Arabs. So when you tell me I'm a colonizer, you're insane. If you unless you're just ignorant of history, which is fine. If you're ignorant of it, I don't fault you. But now you know. Now you don't have any excuse, right? That is the history. You can go look it up. Don't believe me. Go look it up. Anything I say, go look it up. Right? Don't just believe what I say. I'm telling you facts, but verify it, please. Right? Also, the British were here. Guess what the British were doing? The British were colonizing this land. What did the Jews do when we came back to British mandate for Palestine? We decolonized it. We got rid of the British, right? The British left. By the way, the British mandate for Palestine, yes, I know the British and the Jews have a very conflicting history during that period of time. A lot of, Brits were attacked by a lot of armed Jewish resistance fighters, right? But why? Because we were fighting to get our liberation. But notice the Jews did not target innocent civilians. We targeted British military. We didn't just target innocent British people. Even when we attacked the King David Hotel, we, meaning my Jewish forefathers, the people in the group that attacked the hotel, when they attacked the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, it was the headquarters of the British military in Jerusalem. So, of course, they attacked that place. That was the military target. That is a perfectly valid target for them to attack. If you believe in mukawama, or armed resistance, as the Arabs say, right? So, what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm not the invader. I am somebody in my homeland that 2 generations ago, 77 years ago, right, even 1 generation ago, in many cases, there are still people alive today, right, who were in that time, and were involved in fighting against the British and against the Arabs in decolonizing this land. So the Israelis have decolonized this land and made it home once again for the people of Israel, the Jewish people, the people of the book, right? As they're also known in the Quran as Bnei Israel, right? That's us. Now you can say, oh no, your book is corrupt and you're not the real ones. No, we are the real ones. You can deny it, but go look up at the DNA evidence. And don't tell me you can't do DNA evidence in Israel. Actually, one of the biggest companies that does DNA testing is Israeli. And yeah, you can do DNA tests in Israel. You can buy them online, no problem, and do your tests. And Israel respects your privacy. Therefore, they have tighter regulations protecting your privacy. That's all. There is no ban on doing any DNA testing in Israel. To even suggest that is ridiculous, since some of the very first DNA testing available ever in humanity was available in Israel, and some of the very first companies were founded by Israelis and also by non-Israeli Jews in the United States. In fact, the very first one was set up by 2 Jewish guys from Miami, I believe, who used to be in real estate, and they got into DNA testing, and they did really well for themselves in that area too. So that's what I'm telling you, right? That's what's going on. I know I've gone over a lot of different topics, but you guys have been bringing out some questions. The Palestinians took the Jews when they had nowhere else to go. No, the Palestinians did not take in the Jews. Who am I? I'll tell you who I am, Shanju. Palestinians did not take in the Jews, and in fact, even the British did not warmly welcome the Jews. The British themselves tried to block as many Jews as possible, even during World War II, despite the fact that the British mandate was literally set up to create, right, to establish a home for the Jewish people, right? That's why the Jewish mandate was set up. And whether you like the British or not, okay, and I keep saying this again and again, whether you like the British or not, the fact is they did a good thing with the British mandate. Now, did they do it the way that I would have loved to have them to have done it? No, of course not, because they sent people literally back to their deaths during World War II by refusing to accept entry to any number of Jewish immigrants that were coming in on the boats. But they did set up the Jewish mandate for Palestine. Right? They did write the Balfour Declaration. They did divide up the maps. Yes, they cut out 80% of the land that was supposed to be the homeland for the Jews, and they created this fictitious country called Jordan, which if they just called that Palestine and called the rest Israel, would have been enough. But no, they had to create Jordan, install a Hashemite as the king, carve up the map of the Middle East in such a way that it would cause inevitable conflict for many decades, which it has. You can, you know, but eventually they gave up power to the Jewish people, whose state had been voted for by the UN. One of the very few good things they ever did. Right? The UN General Assembly voted to establish or reestablish a Jewish state, and they did so by a vote in the UN General Assembly in 1948. And that vote was adopted, and the Israeli government, the newfound Israeli government, newly reestablished one, created the country, and then that country was attacked by 7 Arab armies, right? The armies of Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Sudan. They all attacked Israel on the very first day that it was reestablished as a state. That's pretty crazy. They all, sent armies towards Israel on that day and began engaging in the fighting on that day. Right? Less than 24 hours after David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence for the new state of Israel. And yet Israel won, despite having a far undermanned army compared to the Arab armies, despite having way less weapons, way less training, way less resources. They only had 1 rifle for every something like 3 or 4 soldiers in the field. 1 for every, imagine that. You have an army and only 1 of your soldiers in the field out of every 4 soldiers in the field even has a rifle. That's crazy, right? That's absolutely crazy. This is interesting. This is very interesting. What kinds of jungle gym stuff here? I don't know. Seems like a kind of harsh territory there. You wouldn't want anybody falling from that, especially from those tall things. Anyway, in the park here. So who am I? I am Yasha. I am Yasha Harari, and just like my channel name is, and I talk about this topic because I know a lot about this topic. I've written authoritative books about it. I've written literally the encyclopedia. I co-wrote. I wasn't the only writer. I was one of the writers that wrote the encyclopedia of the Arab-Israel conflict from 1948 until like 1993, something like that. In that period of time, so I've been in this for a very long time. I helped write that book in the early 1990s, around 1993, 1994, and I think it was published in around 95 or so. Whenever it was published, doesn't matter. It was published in the mid-90s, roughly. And I've written other books and lots of articles and newspaper editorials and such. Since then, you can find my opinions in the Times of Israel blog. You can find my opinions in various places, the Jerusalem Post, etc., over the decades. And you will see that my views have been not just consistent in terms of my moral compass, but you will see that my predictions, based on my analysis, are very spot on. I've been in this area, applying my expertise at this in a variety of ways, politics and lobbying, and military stuff and counter stuff, whatever, all kinds of stuff, since a very long time. Since, like I said, more than a few decades, since the 80s at least, right? And really beginning to learn about it in the 70s when I was a very young kid, because I was one of these kids who was very interested in geopolitics, etc. So that's why I've been at this for as long as I have. It's been a lifelong passion of mine. And I have a lot to say about it, especially because there are a lot of people who talk about it, well-intentioned, who have some experience and some knowledge, and some of them are really good at communicating, but they don't have necessarily all the facts. And I want to make sure that my position is properly represented. Right? Very often my position becomes the norm. Like, I was advocating for a separation wall between Israel and the Palestinians in the 1980s, literally. I remember coming up with the idea with my brother in the 1980s in Jerusalem. I remember the exact day and everything, and the location where we were and all. It was very meaningful. Um, and I remember all kinds of other things that we said were going to happen, or that I said was going to happen, and did. Right, talking about the Second Intifada, what would happen with the Declaration of Principles from the time it was signed, what would happen with the peace with Jordan, many other predictions I made about this situation, what would happen with the withdrawal in Gaza if it wasn't properly done, right? Because I said I'm in favor of it as long as Israel holds a strict line. It says if anybody in Gaza throws so much as a rock over the border fence, we are taking appropriate action to make them stop. And if they fire a rocket at us, it's game over for Gaza, right? Like we're just going to eliminate it. Which may sound very harsh to you, but that's how you prevent a people from doing something stupid like what they did on October 7th. Right? It is time to stop infantilizing the Palestinian people. They are not children. There are children among them, just like there are children in every society. But those of them who make the decisions are not children. And you must stop pretending that they are. You must stop treating them like children. You, meaning we, the collective human beings of the planet, must begin treating Palestinians for what they are. They're people. And once they cross that age of majority, right, and they become adults legally, we should be treating them as such, and we should be holding them to the same kind of accountability that we hold every adult in every society that is decent and civilized. Now, I know that's a bit Palestinians accountable if they're living in the West Bank and Gaza, because you guys aren't ready for that. If you're outside of this area, you guys are not mentally prepared to treat Palestinians like people. But guess what? They are. You know why? Because they're people. They're not little babies that are, yeah, babies are people too, but they're not little babies who are incapable of anything. These are adults who make adult decisions every day of their life. Some of those decisions are easy, some of those decisions are hard, but they make them every day of their life. Some of those decisions are smart, some of those decisions are dumb, but they make them every day of their life. And they have to be held accountable to things like the laws of physics. For example, if a Palestinian walks into the road when there's a lot of traffic driving and there's not time for a car to stop, that car will probably that person. That person cannot avoid that accountability in the sense of, well, you're standing in the middle of a road where there's traffic passing by you and you chose to be there, you're probably going to get hit. If you get hit, you can't really complain about the fact that you put yourself in a position of such danger and then you got hurt by the inevitable danger. Right? Right. This is quite cool. I would show you this, but whatever. So you need to stop infantilizing the Palestinians, is my point. You need to begin treating them as the adults that they actually are. There is no other way for them to actually get their things together. There's another word you could use there instead of things. To get their acts together and begin behaving like decent people and not be led by monsters. Because if we're not clear, their leaders are monsters. They're not just bad leaders, you know, they are monsters who have made a calculated gamble, right, that they would be able to win their war against the Jews by committing genocide against the Jews. That's literally what they did on October 7th. Right? They committed an act of genocide. Now, you may say to me, well, it wasn't an act of genocide. They only killed 1,200 Jews, and the Jews have killed 70,000 of them. Okay, that's not how you measure genocide. They had every intent to kill as many Jews as they could on that day. Their intention was to eliminate in part or in whole a people, the Jewish people, and actually the Israeli people, because they didn't care if you're Jewish or not on that day. And in fact, they didn't care if you were Israeli or not on that day. They just saw people in Israel and attacked them. Didn't matter who they were. Didn't matter what religion they were. Didn't matter what nationality they were. They attacked black people, white people, Muslim people, Christian people, Jewish people, foreigners. Anybody that they saw in Israel was a legitimate target to them. It didn't matter if you were a 24-year-old agricultural student from Nepal, here since 2 weeks, never having been here before, literally getting to learn the ropes, beginning to find your way on the kibbutz that you just moved into a couple weeks before. Suddenly, there's a military war going on, with the start of it being you're literally in your field or in your kibbutz, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of terrorists running at you, shooting at you, killing all of your friends with a grenade while you guys are in a bunker, and you're like the one person left alive, and they drag you, bloodied, to Gaza, where they mistreat you to the point where you die in captivity. That's the kind of thing they did. So quit infantilizing the Palestinians. I'm sick of it. You should be sick of it. If you want Palestinians to have a Palestine, start treating them like grown-ups. Would you give a child control of an entire nation? If you're one of these crazy people who says, yeah, sure, the French used to elevate children to the status of king. Yeah, and guess what? They've had revolutions since then to get rid of that crazy idea. Right? Think about it. What did the French do when they got sick of their kings? Democracy. Exactly. Now, what can the Palestinians do in order to get rid of their terrorist problem? Democracy. Now, you might tell me, oh, but Yasha, anytime we try to install democracies, it's always a failure. Well, don't try. Don't try. Don't try to impose it, right? Just make it a choice that they have to make for themselves. We shouldn't have to impose that on them. They should choose that for themselves. And if they don't choose it for themselves, it says a lot about them. Do you understand me? It says a lot about them. If people are not willing to choose the right way to govern themselves in 2025, then what you're telling me is they're specifically choosing bad ways to live. Well, got news for you. If your plan in life is to live in a bad way, it's not going to go well for you. If your plan in life is to just continue to be a threat to your neighbors, continue to be a threat to your own people, it's not going to go well for you. It's really just not going to go well. Now, is there a way forward? Yes. I've just told you 3 times and more. Stop infantilizing the Palestinians. Let them choose the way forward of being peaceful. Let them choose the way forward of being a democracy. What are you talking about? Explain to me. I am explaining to you. Let them. We are, with all the deportations. What deportations? What deportations? There have been literally no deportations from Gaza. Right? Name one. Hasn't happened. There have been a few Gazans who have been allowed to leave because they wanted to leave, and they paid a lot of money to the Egyptians for the privilege of leaving, because the Egyptians won't let them out unless you bribe them. And some have been let through Israel for medical purposes, right? They've been brought to Israeli hospitals, as we so often do, just like we did with the leader of the October 7th attack when we kidnapped him before, many years ago. And he was included in the release deal when the Hamas had kidnapped Gilad Shalit and then released him in exchange for 1,027 soldiers. Palestinian terrorists, not soldiers. Had that the other way around in my head. Gilad Shalit was an Israeli soldier who was kidnapped in 2006 and was held for 5 years in 2011. was released for 1,027 Palestinian terrorists. One of them was famously or infamously Yahya Sinwar, who went on to lead the attacks against Israel on October 7th, to mastermind the whole thing and everything. Right? So when you say to us, oh, you're just releasing innocent Palestinians who are hostages in Israel, no, we're releasing murderers with blood on their hands, like Yahya Sinwar, who literally had killed Palestinians, not Israelis, but Palestinians in Gaza, and he was arrested for it, and he was serving time in Israeli prisons for it, for killing Palestinians, yeah? Because they obviously don't care if Palestinians kill Palestinians, but they do care if Jews kill Palestinians. Well, Israel cares if anybody kills anybody, and if anybody under Israel's sovereignty, which at the time Gaza was, essentially, it was disputed, but Israel controlled it. Israel had the responsibility to hold that person, whoever killed those people, responsible, and they held Yahya, and yet we released him in the hopes that such a deal would foster peace, but it didn't. Right? We hoped that by getting back Gilad Shalit in exchange for more than 1,000 Palestinians, that this war would subtly fade away, but it didn't. In fact, it got worse. Year after year, there were more and more attacks, and Israel kept getting rocketed by Palestinians in Gaza, and nothing changed. It only got worse. Well, what did change, other than the nothing, was the fact that Israel, in the meantime, developed the Iron Dome. Israel figured out how to contain the problem in Gaza very effectively, but did not foresee all of the potential risk. And obviously, there were massive failures that led to the devastation that happened on October 7th. As a result of arrogance, conceit, whatever you want to call it, of the Israeli military, relying too much on technology, not relying enough on the girls in these surveillance squads, and basically having a really shitty day on that holiday 2 years ago. And that's why we are where we are today, because of that situation. Right? It's not a magical mystery that we need to decipher so much. It's quite obvious. We know the reasons for the failure. We know what happened. We know, in theory, who was responsible, but there still needs to be investigations into that. But we basically know the kinetics of what happened on that day. We don't know all the political reasons, if there were any, for why things happened the way they did. We don't know all the strategic reasons for why things happened the way they did, but in time, hopefully, we'll figure these things out. But what's most important right now is for Israel to basically stop dealing with this situation like it's normal and stop pretending that we can somehow make peace with the Palestinians while they clearly don't have an interest in making peace with us. Again, I know there are Palestinians who do want to make peace with Israel. I get that. But the vast overwhelming majority of Palestinians who people conduct interviews with, who you see on the streets, who people spoke with, etc., the vast majority of them do not really want peace. Now, to be fair, I have actually spoken with a lot of Palestinians, and many of them do want peace, yeah? But their definition of peace varies from there shouldn't be an Israel at all. That's the way to lead to peace. Well, that's not peace. Oh, and there shouldn't be any Jews here, and if they are, they should all be dead. Well, that's not a way to peace, in my opinion. All the way to, sure, let's have a two-state solution and everyone can live in peace as long as we live in peace, and that's fine. Let's leave each other alone and live in peace. And you guys have your leaders, we have our leaders, and we don't fight each other anymore. Okay, so there are people who genuinely have that view, but still, the majority of people, at least the ones I speak to, and the research I've seen, interviews I've seen, etc. Look at the Ask Project. Look at any of the other YouTubers that make content about this kind of thing. when they speak to Palestinians, what do they say? Even the ones who are agreeable, right? They will still disagree on certain basic things. And ultimately, they don't want there to be a peace with Israel, right? They want to keep having mukawama, armed resistance, because they're butthurt that they lost and they can't admit it. They're not man enough. They're cowardly, right? They need to not be so cowardly. They need to stop being so boastful in their cowardliness, because they are very boastful, right? That is their problem. They are too prideful. They are boastful, right? They pretend like they are greater at fighting and winning than they actually are. Yes, they conquered many lands once upon a time, but they haven't been good at that for a long time. And they need to stop pretending like they're so great at it and eat some humble pie and admit defeat. And those who enable them to not do that retard their society entirely. Not a little, entirely. You are literally preventing Arabs from moving forward when you say to them, oh, it's okay, we respect your culture of never admitting defeat. That's very warrior-like of you. It's not warrior-like of them. It's cowardly of them. They don't have the courage to admit defeat. Okay? When you lose, you should be graceful and sportsmanlike, even in war. Or in war, you could say you should be noble. Right? Unless you know your enemy is literally going to slaughter you if you admit defeat and surrender, then when you lose, you should admit defeat and surrender. Like we in Israel, we know for a fact that if we lay down our arms and we surrender to the Palestinians, they would slaughter us. How do we know that? Because their leaders have said so many times. Their leaders who are in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, their leaders who are in the Hamas, their leaders who are in the PFLP, their leaders who are in the Palestinian Authority, the leaders who are in the PLO. It doesn't matter which group you look to. If we literally laid down our weapons and said, we will not defend ourselves, live in peace with us or do whatever you want, but we will not defend ourselves, they would literally slaughter us. Every single one of us, man, women, and child. All right, okay, when you're talking like this, that's what they're going to do. You sure? But your brain is no function. I don't know what you mean, Richard Merrill. My brain is like this because I understand the situation. And I'm guessing I understand it a lot better than you based on my experience. I am like this because I want peace, but I'm willing to defend my country to get it. I don't know if you've ever defended Israel. Doesn't matter to me. I mean, sure, if you did, great. Hats off to you. Thank you for your service. But yeah, if you have or if you haven't, you should still be able to appreciate the fact that I live in a country that is under constant attack since its inception. And in the last 77 years, we have not had a day, not one, of actual peace with all of our neighbors. Not because we don't want it, but because they refuse to let us have it. And that we show them that they cannot just keep living like this in their fantasy land, right? There is a price to pay for trying to be belligerent your entire life and to create a state of violence and warfare among a people who seek no violence with you. Right? It's not okay. They can't just be violent all the time without a consequence. And if you're going to tell me, well, Gaza was the consequence. Well, no, Gaza's not actually the biggest consequence. The biggest consequence will be that the Palestinians will never get a state. That would be the biggest consequence. And that they would be driven from their land and never will come back. That would be a terrible consequence. I don't think we should do that. Like I've explained to you before, they are literally our brothers and sisters going back more than 1,000 years. Those of them who are from DNA that was forcibly converted, which is, at the time, most of them. Right? So, if you can comprehend that, if you can get into your thick skull and into your brain the concept that Israel's best interest is not to just kick out the Palestinians from these lands. Israel's best interest is to defeat the terrorists with the help of the Palestinians so that the Palestinians can not only redeem themselves, but demonstrate to us that they are serious about building a state that can live in peace side by side with us. That would be the ultimate proof of it. Short of that, you're dealing with hypotheticals that are moot, like completely moot. Because what does it matter if you tell me, well, they want peace, so you should give them peace? What is it? How do you know that? How can you say they want peace? Where's your evidence that they want peace? Right? There's no evidence that they want peace right now. I know there's some Palestinians who want peace, but where's the evidence that the majority of them do? They are still led by violent extremists. And when I say violent extremists, I don't mean that they are extremist in their radical ideology. No, because that is a literal ideology. And I know many Palestinians and Arabs will tell me, and Muslims will tell me, no, it's not. They're not literalists because there's more than one interpretation, so anybody can interpret it the way they want. Okay, well, if you stick to the actual, letters of the book, the way they are written and read in plain language without over-interpreting, right? Not just reading what it says and not trying to read into it, just read what it says in black and white. It says it right there very clearly what they intend, and they are not, by any stretch of the imagination, a so-called religion of peace. Anyone who believes that they are, you should have your head examined, because they're not. They're the exact opposite of that. It's a conquering religion, and it is one that prides itself on being a conquering religion, right? Well, if you pride yourself on being a conquering religion, don't be surprised when there are consequences to your proud conquering ways. Don't be surprised. Right? Don't be surprised when you get your ass kicked and the other side says, yeah, we're not giving you everything you want. Suck it up, big boy. Deal. And if you fail to suck it up and deal with it, you will experience unpleasant situations. Right? So it's important to remember that. It's important to keep those things in mind, because if you actually care, as I do, for a real peace between all people here in the region, if you actually want to see a better future, then you will do what is best for the people of this area. I have Islamophobia. No, I don't have Islamophobia in my veins at all. In fact, at all. I served with Muslims. I have no problem with Muslims as long as they are peaceful. Right? I defended Israel with Muslims, okay, who served in the IDF. What do you say here? If you stick to the letter of the Bible, it's far worse. Sure, the Bible has also dark stuff in it, but you know what? The difference is, I could be Jewish and Muslim. Yeah, you could be Jewish and Muslim, because Judaism allows it, but Islam doesn't actually. So you couldn't be Muslim and Jewish, but you could be Jewish and Muslim. I'm not Christian. Not Christian. Okay, I don't want to become Jewish. Greetings from Jew. Hey, hello, Duff. Shalom. Okay. Jewish. Well, yeah. Again, yeah. Judaism had a dark period, but we had reforms, and so did Christianity. Anyone can be Jewish. Okay. Yeah, I definitely. Again, I don't have that. Allah hath blessed you. Great. Yeah. Wonderful. Allah Akbar, brother. But Shalom Aleichem also. Goes back to Muhammad and their philosophy. Yes, absolutely. You could be Jewish one day, Muslim the next. Anyone could be Jewish. Yes, you can. Judaism is not exclusive to beliefs, right? Because it's an ethno-religious group. So we are both an ethnicity and a religion. We are a nation. We are a people. We are more than just a religion. So there are Jews who believe in Islam. There are Jews who are Buddhists. There are Jews who are atheists. There are Jews who are Christians. There are Jews who are agnostic. Whatever, it doesn't matter. And obviously, most Jews are Jews. Or most Jews are Jewish. In their religion, in their religious practice. The conflict in Israel is not about religion. No, it definitely is in part about religion, in part about land, in part about too much Arab pride and boastfulness, their arrogance, their unwillingness to admit defeat, their unwillingness to accept reality. That it's all together, by the way. It's not just one thing or the other. On the IDF, why the F would we listen to you about Islam? Okay, Dran Dana. There are Muslims in the IDF, in case you didn't know that. There are Sunni Muslims, and there are also Druze who serve in the IDF. And there are Bedouins who serve in the IDF. So, yeah. And I, like many people, served in the IDF. It's not a unique thing when you're in Israel because service is mandatory. I did a slightly different service, but it doesn't matter. Service is service. Um, why would you listen to me? Like what? Because so you think if I hear a voice from Hamas, I'm not going to listen to what they say, even if I don't believe them, because they habitually lie? You think I'm not going to listen to that voice just to hear what it has to say, especially if it's threatening the lives of my fellow Jews and Israelis? You think I'm not going to listen? That's that says a lot about your stance on things, about your view of things in the world. It says a lot about how willfully ignorant you are. Why would you listen to the words of somebody who has a lot of experience in this area just because he has served in an organization that you apparently don't like? That's completely nuts. How else do you expect to learn? Like, seriously, how else do you expect to learn? Please tell me. I would love to know. I don't see you learning only by listening to sources that feed your echo chamber. If that's what you call learning, it's not. You are just reflexively strengthening your own beliefs. That's not learning. That's called, increasing your bias, and that's not proper education, right? Anybody can feed their own bias. That's not education. That's not learning. If you want to actually learn, you have to turn to sources that are not your belief to learn from other viewpoints, especially when you're talking about things like geopolitics, religion, etc., conflict. This has never been a territorial. Really, it's not a territorial conflict. Okay, if it's not a territorial conflict, why do the Palestinians care if we have this land? They shouldn't, according to your own logic. She for sure didn't know that. Doesn't know much at all. Must be ignorant. Wouldn't let the last 2 days as you do. Too many roles. Okay. Oops, projecting. I don't know what you mean by oops projecting, but there you go. It's absolutely about land, and it's absolutely about religion, and it's absolutely about many things. This is about Muslims not letting the indigenous people, the Jewish nation, live on their. It's also that, Duff. Yes, it's also about the Muslims refusing to allow, and specifically the Muslim Arabs who were in and around this area in 1948 and before and since, who refused to allow Jews to have our own homeland in our own homeland. That's what this is about. They refuse to allow us to exist, not just to have our homeland, but to exist here, period. And the Arabs who tell us, oh, we Arabs, we accepted you in, or the people who say the Palestinians accepted you in. First of all, there were no Arabs calling themselves Palestinians then. But put that aside for a second. The few Arabs who were friendly with Israel, guess what? They were friends of Israel, and Israel didn't harm them. And those who stayed in Israel after the war began, all 200,000 of them, got citizenship and have multiplied in number tenfold since 1948. And by the way, the same demographic increase has happened to those who live in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, right? They have also multiplied their populations tenfold to the point where now the population of the Palestinians, who were called Arabs in 1948, they numbered around 500, 600,000, something like that, maybe 700,000. Yeah, 700,000, right? And now there are more than 6 million, right? 7 million, whatever. It's about like, what is it, like 3 million, 5 million, something like that in Judea and Samaria, in Gaza. So they only have like about 1 million. I think it's 7 million even, or 6 million. So they only have roughly 1 million or so less Palestinians than there are Jews living in this land now, right? So obviously, they have not shrunk in population. They've grown 10x. So no genocide, because you can't tell me there's a genocide. Your population is growing 10x, and there's clearly no intent to destroy your entire people by the side you're accusing, right? It's weird. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm I collect samples for this laboratory that I sponsor, bring them samples of things, and the scientists test them. And it's just a fun hobby for me and a way to contribute to the world of science by sponsoring this lab and helping them gather samples of random selected things they ask me to pick up on different days. Today they're asking me to pick up very random thing. A lot of it is like I'm helping clean things, so I help them pick up various types of I guess you call it litter or something. It's some weird. Anyway, they just asked me to do this, and I'm happy to help. So that's what. By the way, that's often what I'm doing when I'm going on my little walks and talks. Is I'm going around picking up scientific samples of things, or samples for scientific studies. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I just wanted to explain to you, in case you're wondering what I was doing there. So I realize I've now been on this live stream an hour and 16 minutes. You exist. Yes, I exist. That's right. No, I know you do, but what do I do? Okay. What do you do? Well, yeah, exactly. If it was all about territory, the Palestinian leaders would have accepted a deal. But it's not all about territory. It is partly about territory in that they don't want Israel to have any land. They want the Arabs to have all the land. That is about territory. And it's not all about religion, but it is largely about religion because it's the Arabs who don't want, or it's the Muslims, Arabs specifically, who don't want the Jews to live here at all, right? It's the Muslim Arab leaders specifically, not all of them, yeah, obviously, but the ones who are their leaders, yeah. The ones who are their leaders are causing big problems for the ones beneath them. So that's what the status of the situation is. That is why the Arabs and the Israelis are still in a state of warfare, not just in Gaza, but in the bigger picture, right? Any relation to Micha? I don't know who Micha is. I do know many Michas, but I'm not directly related to any Michas that I know, as far as I know. Go back to Israel. Exactly. I am back in Israel. Thank you. Should I view the messages that are held for review? Let's see. Many times they're just curses. Okay. Well, Rory Tater says F Israel. Oh, how original of you. I wasn't expecting that at all, I said sarcastically. And another one. Oh, another one. So, hide. Just because you're F Netanyahu. Okay, great. Wonderful. You're so original. Your anti Semitism precedes you, as it usually does. So, what I'd like to just say once again, to remind you, is that Israel now has been in this ceasefire with Hamas for more than 3 weeks. We've not yet received all of the hostages that we were supposed to receive, right? Because we were supposed to get all of them back. And they still have about 12 or 13 or so hostages, bodies still being held by Hamas in Gaza. So they still have a bunch of bodies that they're supposed to have returned 3 weeks ago. They had 72 hours to return all of them. They didn't do it, right? Yes, they returned the live ones, and then they returned some of the dead ones, and then they returned less of the dead ones, and less of the dead ones, and less of the dead ones, and now they still have 13 of them that they have not returned. And again, I understand why the families of the deceased want their bodies back ASAP. However, every day that goes on, we are seeing exactly what I've been telling you play out. We're seeing the Hamas and the world kick and complain like little babies who can't have it their way because mommy and daddy have decided no more sugar for you. You need to learn to eat your vegetables. You need to learn to eat your carrots, your mashed peas, whatever it is. And the Palestinians and their useful idiot supporters refuse to play ball. They refuse to eat their carrots and peas. Well, then you might just have to go to bed without your meal tonight, kid. Go back to Israel. Yes, I'm in Israel. They spread anti-Arab and anti-Islam hate when they start playing the victim and anti-Semitic. What victim? What are you talking about? You going to tell me it's not anti-Semitic to say that Israel shouldn't exist and that there should be no homeland for the Jews and that all Jews should be dead? Because that's exactly what the Arab leaders have said time and time again. That's exactly what the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Hamas have said time and time again. How is that anti-Arab? How is that anti-Islam? I'm stating the things they are saying at the highest level, not a member of their group said it. No, their leaders have said this, okay, many times for decades. How do you think that's somehow not anti-Semitic? You're crazy if you think that. So, yeah, the extremely violent Muslims who hate Israel are anti-Semitic. If you don't understand that, you're an idiot. Sure, Rory, you don't even know what you're talking about. That practice, which is not a good one, is, by the way, something that most people in the Jewish tradition, we have not done that for a very long time because we have better technology now. We have devices that we use for that instead. And that's what most people have, right? These little, sterile glass tube or a plastic tube or disposable plastic tube or something like that, right? The professionals who do this, that's what they do. And they don't do that practice anymore. Do I think that practice was good? No, it wasn't the best practice. I think that scientifically, it's good that they stopped it. At the time that it was started, it was most probably perceived as a way to help the child not contract various diseases because of the, effects of having saliva, which contains enzymes, which can be antibacterial, etc., in certain circumstances. So it was perceived as a way to actually keep things more sterile back in the days when we knew a lot less about science and medicine. But since then, we've obviously learned a lot about science and medicine, thanks in no small part to many Jews, among other people. And as a Christian, okay, so yeah, I agree that that's not a good practice, and I'm glad that we don't do that anymore. I know there are some people who do it. They are extremely rare among our people, but yes, some people do that. And yes, it is extremely rare. And no, I am not a proponent of it. Anyway, and yeah, it has nothing to do with that last thing you said. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's literally a scientific procedure in order to do a cultural tradition that has gone back thousands and thousands of years, which, by the way, has been demonstrated many times to be healthier for the people. You can argue and tell me it's not, whatever, that's your opinion. You can have your own scientific study that shows your opinion is more correct. That's fine too. Scientists can go back and forth about it forever until they figure that one out. In the meantime, it is a culture, a tradition of our culture, whether you like it or not, that we circumcise. So you can be anti-Israel and not be anti-Semitic. Yeah, you can certainly be anti-Israel and not be anti-Semitic. Absolutely. But usually people aren't. Okay? If you're actually really anti-Israel, you're usually anti-Semitic. Not everyone. I'll admit that. Right? I'm not anti-Israel, but there are many things about Israel that I criticize. Okay? It might surprise you, but I do. In fact, I have a lot of criticisms about Israel, more than you could possibly know. But I still love Israel. Part of the reason I love Israel is that I have the right to criticize Israel. In another country, I wouldn't have that right necessarily. If I was, let's say, I don't know, living in the Palestinian Authority territories, right? They don't allow criticism of their government. Anybody who tries it usually finds themselves dragged to death or hanged to death or beheaded to death or shot to death or any other number of ways that one can be led to their death. So yeah, I'm not a fan of being 100% only in support of everything the government does. No, because I have a lot of legitimate criticisms about Israel and the government and the way things are done here. I have a lot more than you could possibly know of criticisms. But that doesn't mean that I don't love this country. and that I'm not willing to defend it, because I am. I've stood on the line for it, and I would do so again if it was necessary for me to do that. That's how I am. That's who I am. As a Christian, we need to work with the people, help protect Israel, place, and the people. Thank you, Mike Hawk. I appreciate that very much. Ray Smith, I'm a Jew, and we are people of Israel, the tribe of Israel. We don't have a land. Well, no, we do have a land, Ray. It's called Israel. And we have a homeland. So if you're not in it, well, if you want to come to it, you can, because this is your homeland. Kuntz, oh yeah, because that's in the Bible. Yeah, it is in the Bible. Your family serve in the IDF, and honestly, half my family is full of hate. Well, Ray, I'm sorry to hear that your family is full of hate. But I'm also pleased to hear that your family serves in the IDF. And our way has been hijacked by Zionists. No, Ray Smith, Jews are Zionists, by and large. Okay, 95% of us are Zionists. All the Zionist means is somebody who believes that the Jews have a right to sovereignty in their homeland. That's literally all it means, right? If you believe that Jews have a right to sovereignty in our homeland, you are a Zionist. That's it. It doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't mean dispossessing any other people of their homelands. It doesn't mean, kicking out people. It doesn't mean killing people. It doesn't mean anything like that. It doesn't mean hating people. Nothing. It doesn't mean doing violent demonstrations or any of that garbage. There are people who do all those things, or attempt to, and they are in the wrong. That doesn't make them a Zionist. A Zionist is somebody who believes Jews have the right to live in their homeland. Now, there may be people who do those terrible things and also believe that Jews have a right to self-determination in our homeland. So yes, you can be a Zionist and you can be a criminal. Sure, you can also be a Muslim and a criminal. You can be a person who wants Palestine to exist and a criminal. Right? I mean, Islam is a Zionist religion. Islam, the book says itself that the Jews, the Bnei Israel, should go back to their land, should go to their land. Israel, the Holy Land, Al-Quds, right? They say it many times. Dog slobber is sterile. Yeah, dog slobber is sterile. Relatively. Not entirely, but relatively. What? You can infect, criticize the PA with no repercussions. Really? You can criticize the PA with no repercussions. That's interesting, because last night I had a discussion with a bunch of people in different places in the PA. And they told me point blank, yeah, we can't say that. And when I asked them, are you not able to say that because of the potential risk to you from fear of reprisals from certain authorities in your area? They confirmed it. Okay. So you're not correct when you say you can freely criticize the PA. You cannot freely criticize the PA. There is a tremendous risk to doing that. If you say something like, I love Israel, and you live in the Palestinian Authority areas, that could cost you your life. If you say, I just want peace with Israel, that can cost you your life. If you say it at the wrong time in the wrong place, right? Don't think for a second that you are safe to say those kind of things in areas under PA control, because you're not. Okay? You're under severe, direct risk of death, or at least pain and suffering, beatings, torture, etc. You can say those kind of things. So don't, right? For your own safety. Wow, look at that cool dog. Anyway, oh, look at that. It is, in fact, 2 nights after a full moon or so. Okay. You're conflating the Palestinian Authority with Hamas. No, I'm not conflating the Palestinian Authority with Hamas. If you think you have free speech under the PA, you really need to learn a thing, because they do not have free speech. I mean, it's hilarious that you think they do. Metro GM. Yeah, that's not what Zionism is. Yes, it is what Zionism is, and you clearly don't know anything about it. But there you go. That's your uninformed opinion, and you have the right to be wrong. And I will defend your right to be wrong, but it won't stop me from informing you, and whoever else wants to listen, that in fact, the PA is not a place with free expression. Right? You don't have freedom of speech under the PA. and you don't have freedom of speech under the Hamas. Yes, it may be worse under the Hamas at times than under the PA, but don't think for a second that you have free speech under the PA. I mean, if you think that, you're crazy. Like you don't know what free speech is if you think that, because the Palestinian Authority absolutely punishes, imprisons, tortures, and kills its critics. It's not my uninformed opinion. You could go ahead and read the works of Theodore Herzl. Yeah, Mero GM. Is there any precedent that backs your claim? I haven't or heard of the PA. Many that the people who criticize it. First of all, the PA didn't exist during the time of Theodore Herzl, but nice try. You clearly demonstrated that you don't know anything about this. If you think that the PA existed during the time of Theodore Herzl, so you clearly are misinformed or underinformed or uninformed. Period. No, the PA absolutely punish people who criticize it, very much, and they definitely criticize or rather punish people who show sympathy with Israel. Absolutely, 100%. If you think that's not true, I don't know what to tell you other than you are, again, you have the right. Right? No problem. You want to be wrong? Be wrong. But I'm not going to let that slide. I'm going to point that out because you should know when you're wrong. Right? And you're welcome. I'm glad you let the Jew inform you. The Jew Israeli Zionist. The white colonizer, who, by the way, if you knew anything about me, you would think that's a laugh too. Because as much as I look white, you wouldn't call me that if you knew who I am. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up now because I'm going for more than 90 minutes. Which is frankly a lot further than I thought I would go with this. So once again, if you would please, smash that like, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and share this video. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Till then, peace. Shalom.